Hello everyone and welcome to Call Sign Charlie Models. Time for another inbox review, and today we have yet another beautiful kit from Kotare right here, the 1/32 Spitfire Mark 5A. And we've done a few other Spitfires from Kotare on this channel earlier, and if you go into that playlist you'll be able to see the other Spitfires inbox reviews. But even though we've done the other ones, I'm still going to go through this one like I've never seen any of the others before, because it has been a while. That's why I like to kind of space them out a little while, because I don't have any fresh thoughts about the kit in my head. So I like to space them out a few weeks in between of like kits. So this is literally my first impression of the kit. Now on the front box art, typical of Kotare, which is wingnut wing-esque, we have some absolutely gorgeous box art on the front. It even looks like it's painted on canvas when you're looking at it up close, and the artwork is from Daryl Legg right here. So again, you could cut this out, put it on a frame and hang it on your wall, and it'll be an absolute gorgeous addition to your wall art right here. Alright, we also have the standard length of the kit. We have a total parts count of 143 parts, a length of 28.5 centimeters, and a width of 35 centimeters, which in US units is 11.2 inches by 13.77 inches. So 11 1/4 and 13 3/4 inches for your total length and width. Alright, we know that Kotare does not include engines in their kits, so that is one reason why the parts count is kind of low for this, but we know it's going to be absolutely gorgeous when we look inside. Now looking inside, we have all the parts that are, looks like, individually packed right here. No issues with the packing on this. I'm going to get everything set up and set off to the side so we can start going through the instructions, the decals, and then we'll go through all the plastics. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Alright, so we're starting off with the instructions. We have a nice history about the Spitfire right here, and then we have the actual length and specifications of the Spitfire right here, including max weight, max speed, number that were manufactured of the Mark 5A, which is 211, and the production time frame, which was March 1941 through June of 1941. Engine 1440 horsepower Rolls-Royce Merlin 45, and then a ceiling of 37,700 feet, and armament of 303 Browning machine guns. Then also lists off all the references that they used for the manufacturing or the design of this kit. Alright, so opening it up, we have our standard legend of symbols that we're going to be using throughout the instructions here, and then also our color callouts using Tamiya, Humbrol, SMS, and also your federal standard numbers right here as well. Then moving on, we have all of our sprues, and also the parts that we won't be using are blocked out right in here with a dark blue. So pay attention to that. You can go through and cut all these parts out before you start building, so you don't have any issues of using the wrong parts later on. Alright, so starting off with the kit, we're starting off with our instrument dial. It looks like we have decals for all the dials right here, and then a nice color call out for that piece as well. Then after that, we're getting the instrument dial added in, and then some other detail parts to our cockpit, as you can see right through here, including our rudder pedals as well. Alright, continuing work with the cockpit, we're adding our control stick, and then also a couple other pieces along here. Then we're starting off with our seats, and then our seat belts as well. Then we have our armor plating wall going on, and then our flare rack going into the seat. Then we have a couple more pieces like our fuel tank, and then some more bulkhead detail or framing detail to go in. And as you see right here, it does say that we do need to drill out all these framing holes right here for weight saving measures. Alright, then after that we're adding in our sidewalls. Getting all that done, we have some detail on the sidewalls to go on. And then we have some more detail going on all the way through on the back side as well. Then we have a nice reference photo right here showing you where all the decals go and color callouts as well. Alright, then after that we're completing our cockpit with the last sidewall going on. We also need to drill out some holes on part A46 right here. And then after that we do have some rigging to go on with the seat belt, as you can see right there, and down on the bottom with all the pulleys and systems going on. Just like Wingnut Wings, same type of rigging instructions, so it means it's going to be super easy to follow, and as long as you follow this, you'll be a-okay with that. Alright, then moving on, we have our paint guide of the cockpit. Again, a very nice detailed touch on that, and then also all the decal placement for all the decals in our cockpit as well. Alright, so moving on with the fuselage interior, we're getting a couple panels in, and then we need to move a hole right here, and then we have a few other parts to put in, and then getting more pieces in, like our prop shaft right here. Then after all that's done, we are going to, looks like we're going to sandwich our fuselage halves together right there. We also have some detail parts to go on the back side of here, as you can see. Alright, moving on. Up next, we're adding in some rigging that's going in right along here, right behind the cockpit. And then we have a few holes to drill, and then we have a hole to drill on our spine, or our dorsal right here to go on. And then we're getting all of that closed up. And again, top cowling going on, our gun sight and everything. Again, we have some nice reference photos right there. Then our door looks like we need to fill, sand, and smooth right along here. Don't know why that is, but we'll have to see. That's in the closed display position as well. Alright, so moving on, we're working on our tailplane. Looks like we have our elevators. We have the option to have them in the up or down position right here, and then we're adding in this piece A19 right here. Alright, and then we have a nice, again, a nice reference photo right here with the description of the reference photo down on the bottom. Alright, so after that, we're working on our wings, getting our wings all done. Looks like we're going to have our gun, just the short barrels right here. It won't be a full-length barrel, but it should be fairly nice. We have a nice wing spar going on that's going to help strengthen our wings, and then going in with our landing gear wells right there. And again, some reference photos with attention to these parts right here. And then after that's all done, we are getting our tops of our wings glued on and assembled. Then after that, we have some wing fairings to go in right there. That's going to be where the fuselage joins up. It's really going to be a nice attachment point, and we do have a hole to drill out for our camera gun port right there. Alright, moving on, we're adding our radiator and oil coolers right through here, getting all those pieces in, and then we are attaching our fuselage to our wings, getting that all done, and then we have this little belly pan to add in right there. And again, a nice description of the top and bottom cowling. It says oil tank and bottom cowlings from mid-production Spitfire Mark 5B BM202. Note the imperfectly fitting panels and generally rough finish. So if you have panel lines, you're going to be okay with this. Now the question is, will judges know this, or are you going to have to point it out? I might even, with this, if I enter it in a show, I might cut this image out and include that with the entry for a model, because that way you don't get judged on seam lines. So because other judges that don't know any better, which, I mean, for me, I wouldn't know any better. I'd see that as a seam line and say, hey, they forgot to take care of those seam lines. But with this, if you cut this out and then add that to your model entry, hopefully that will help with the judging. Alright, moving on, we're adding in our undercarriage right here. Got to drill another hole, and then after that we have a note of the angles of our landing gear in the front side aspect, and also the side aspect as well. Alright, then moving on, we have some details with our propeller, getting that done, and also our exhaust right here. And and I can't tell what these pieces are for, but we'll have to see. And then also it says to drill out the exhaust right here. For me, I might just go ahead. I think Ask has the drilled out exhaust for this. I'll have to take a look, but again, you can still cut them out and drill them out and do all that, but I'm going to look into seeing about some aftermarket resin sets. Alright, then moving on, we're working on our canopy, getting our canopy all done. We have the option of having the door in the open position as well. And then also we have, looks like 2 different canopy options, maybe 3 canopy options to go through. Also looking like we're adding in our locking latch as well. Alright, then after that we just have a little bit of rigging to add on, going from our tailplane to the fuselage on both sides on that. And then after that we have our decals, our stencils all going on right here. A lot of stencil decals going on. And then again, a nice color reference photo, or not color reference photo, black and white reference photo showing some decals and everything else going on here. Alright, so now we're getting into our color callouts and our decal options. So our first option A is Spitfire Mark 5A R7208 FYG Liverpool 3 TD Williams RA Johnston WDG Wing Group. Don't know what the D stands for, but Smith, or maybe that's his initials. MJ Smith, JF Reeves, and DE Fair from the 611 Squadron, June through July of 1941. Again, a nice color scheme right here. It does look like this one was wrecked. Yep. So this one was wrecked. A nice reference photo of that. Do a diorama if you want to, having that, but you're going to tear up a perfectly gorgeous model. But then again, it would look really good in a diorama. And then we have the top and bottom profiles of the same aircraft right here, and then a history about the pilots and the aircraft right here. Alright, moving on to option B, we have Spitfire Mark 5A R7268 KLM, the Swan, J. Stocco, P.O. Page, J.W. Panther, E.F.J. Charles, N. Orton, and C. Cookson of the 54 Squadron, June through July of 1941. Again, a nice color scheme through that as well. Again, we have a nice history about the pilots and all that, and the aircraft and everything that was done. We also have the top and bottom profiles, and also if you look right here, we have a nice chipping and weathering included in the artwork right here, so you definitely will be able to weather this accurately when you're doing this model. I'm really loving the touch that they do, adding the weathering into the color scheme, so you have some reference on that is actually accurate and better than chancing it with a Google search. Alright, then lastly, I think this is our last option. Yes, this is our last option. We have Spitfire Mark 5A W3185 DB Lord Lloyd 1 from the famous Douglas Bader Tangmere Wing, August of 1941. And then we have gorgeous, this is the Royal Canadian Air Force. Right here we have on the bottom, or I thought those were the, never mind. Forget what I just said. But again, we have some nice color schemes on this going on. Looks very nice. We have again a nice history about Douglas Bader. We have the top and bottom profiles right here, as you can see. So definitely going to help with the weathering and painting of this. And then we have again some more reference photos, and again our shout outs to all the people that helped with the instructions, decals, the manufacturing, the design of this kit on the back page right here. You don't see any other manufacturers do that, so that is a very nice touch from Kotare right there. Then on the back we just have a list of all the parts that are included right here, and if you have any missing parts, for your contact information for that. Alright, so starting off with our decals, we have the typical Kotare quality level decals, which are absolutely perfect. As you can see all the way through here, no issues with any of these decals. The stencils look very nice as well. The feel of them, nice and thin on here. Again, no issues on any of these. I am really excited to build one of these kits and get to use these decals. Alright, onto our plastic parts. Alright, so starting off with this sprue, we have a lot of little detail parts along with our wheels right here. As you can see, we have our wheel wells right here. Again, nicely molded, no issues with any of that. We have some other detail parts right here. I'm not sure what those are. And then our exhaust, again, we're going to have to drill those out to make them hollow. So I'm definitely going to look into getting some aftermarket exhaust. I think that might be, that and maybe the wheels might be the only aftermarket I get for this kit. But everything else on here really does look very nice on here. I'm not seeing any real issues. We do have all these holes to drill out on this framing right here, as in the instructions. But everything else is looking very nice. And then we flip it over to the other side. Alright, so let's see. Going right along on our landing gear doors, we do have a couple of ejector pin marks, but those are going to be covered up by the struts, so no issues with that. And then with the oil cooler and radiator section right here, we do have a couple of ejector pin marks on that, but again, we're going to have a piece that goes right in front of that to block that off. So again, no issues with that. Some very nice job on all the parts, as you can see. On our doors, again, if you're going to have it in the open position right here, we nice tooling on here, and then we have our ejector pin marks on this side, but you're not going to see that because it's going to be up against the fuselage. And then for the closed position, it's absolutely smooth on this side right here, and then on the inside, again, no ejector pin marks on that. So very nice work on the design of that. And this piece right here, this is for our back armor plate, I think. We do have a few ejector pin marks, but I'm thinking those are going to be covered up by the plastic as well. So no issues with any of these parts so far. All the ejector pin marks are in places that you're not going to be able to see. Alright, moving on to our wings. Alright, so looking at the wings, we have some very nice panel line detail. Not much rivet detail to it, but we do have some raised rivets right along here, as you can see. And with it being Kotare, kind of like how Wingnut, they went to the details of Wingnut wings. So we know if it's like this, we know it's accurate. So again, very nicely done on the panel lines and everything on here. Not littered with rivets. All the rivets are where they're supposed to be, and they're actually a little bit raised rivets, so very nice touch on that. Then on the underside, again, we have just gorgeous panel line and rivet detail on here. As you can see, everything is looking very, very nice. And then on these little fuselage parts where they mate in with the fuselage, again, absolute gorgeous detail. And then on the wings, we have the full wingtip, so we won't be adding a wingtip to the edge. And then the join line is on the bottom right here, and I'm assuming that's going to be right where a panel line would be anyways. So hopefully that is a great fit there, so we can actually use that as the panel. Alright, up next we have some fuselage detail and rudders and tailplane and all that stuff. So going along with our tailplane, again, very nice detail with the ribbing on here. Then also these tabs, we can cut those off to have them in the up or down position right there. And then our rudder, again, very nice detail on that. Our fuselage, looking at that, we have some gorgeous rivet detail, nice and raised, very faintly raised detail. I mean, this is phenomenal detail on this kit so far from what I am seeing. I'm not seeing any issues with anything so far. Just absolutely phenomenal rivet detail all the way through. And then on this piece right here, we have some more gorgeous detail on that. As you can see, the same, it's a repeat on the fuselage detail on the other side. We do have a hatch to throw in, so if you want to leave this one open to show off some of the detail that goes into the back side, you can do that. And then our engine cowls right here, not much detail to it, but there is some nice like kind of rivet detail to it as well. Then our belly pan, again, nice panel line and rivet detail on that. Now flipping over to the other side. Alright, so the only parts that we're really concerned with is right here along the cockpit area, and all of this you will not be able to see for the ejector pins that are right here. You're going to have all the cockpit detail and everything that's going to block that off on that. You do also have a little bit of detail right up in here molded in just to add into that. And then on the other side, we really don't have much detail to that. We do have a little bit of framing detail in there, as you can see, and a light going on. That's about it. But I mean, this is absolutely perfect detail. And then all the ejector pin marks are placed in locations that you won't be able to see. Now what I'm wondering is this hatch that's right here on the opposite side. Alright, so you do have an ejector pin mark that's right on here, so you might be able to see this one if you leave that hatch open. So definitely, if you're going to leave that open, you're going to want to take care of that ejector pin mark. Alright, moving on to our next sprue. Alright, so we have some our instrument panel right here, very nice. We're going to have the decals for all of that, and then you go in with your UV resin right here and put it in, and you'll have some nice dial faces on there. We do have a few ejector pin marks to cut off, but it shouldn't be an issue. But for the rest of the detail on here, really looks nice. We have our seatbelt molded in right here, and then we have a seat without the seatbelt molded in. So again, having those two options, I think if I can find some HGW seatbelts for this, that's the way I'm going to go with this. And then with our sidewall detail, again, absolutely gorgeous detail with the framing and rivets all through there. And then we have our sidewall detail going on as well. So again, gorgeous detail. Alright, so up next are our clear parts, and again, clear parts look absolutely gorgeous. They are crystal clear. I'm not seeing any seam lines on there. I do have a little bit of a scuff on the very top of this canopy right here, just from getting rubbed around. But I also do love the fact that they have the option of having this all closed up right here. So I'm going to leave the canopy when it's finished and built. I'm going to have the canopy open, right? But I'm going to use this one as a paint mask. So I'm going to glue this in with some Elmer's glue, and then do all my painting and everything. And then when I'm all done, I can pop this off real quick, and then I can start adding in all the extra parts right here. But again, these are crystal clear. I am not seeing any issues, minus a little bit of a scuff right there, but with a little quick polish, shouldn't take that right out, and no issues with any of that. So again, very nicely done on the clear parts. Alright, going on with our last sprue. Alright, so we do have a few parts on this. I believe that we're not going to use like these exhaust shrouds. I think these are exhaust shrouds. Maybe they go on the bottom of the wings, but we have that. And then again with our seats right up here, as you can see, I can't tell. Nope, didn't break off. Alright. So, okay, I see how this is. So this is molded in two different pieces, because on other Spitfires we would have to cut the seat belts off back here, as you see, but they've been molded as a separate piece right there. So that's nice. But again, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find the HGW seat belts and go that route for that. But other than that, the detail like on this radio box right here is very nice. And then on the throttle quadrant as well, some nice detail on that right there. Then going on with our instrument panel, pretty sure we're not going to be using this one, but I'll have to check and see. But again, some nice detail around. We have our exhaust. Again, if you're going to use these, you're going to have to drill them out and take care of all that. Again, much easier just to get some resin or 3D printed ones. Propellers and everything. Our doors, again, nice detail all the way around. No issues with anything on here. As you can see, all the ejector pin marks are placed in locations that are not going to be visible when the model is built. We do have a couple of ejector pin nubs that are on these exhausts right here, but they just fold off real easily, and there's no more issue with that. As you can see, I already took care of them. All done. But everything else on here looks very nice. Alright, so that does it for the Kotare 1/32 Spitfire Mark 5A. And like always, the Kotare kits look absolutely gorgeous, right in line with Wingnut Wings. And that's because they do, I think the designer for Kotare is a former Wingnut Wings designer. So I think that's one of the reasons why. But again, just the detail on here, with the kit, the instructions, the extra bonus detail and information that are included in the instructions is a very nice touch. Especially how they have certain paint color callouts on areas, so there's no questions about any of that. For the kit, for aftermarket, I think the only thing that I'm going to really look into are the exhausts and maybe the wheels. And of course a paint mask for the canopy. But other than that, I think this kit is going to be absolutely perfect when it's all said and done. The decals look great. I'm definitely going to do the Douglas Bader aircraft on that. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about this this kit. I think it was an absolutely gorgeous kit, like all the other ones, and I'm looking forward to building this one, and hopefully someday I can get my hands on their new BF 109. So fingers crossed on that. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this inbox review. I hope if you're on the fence about getting this kit, I hope it helped you make your decision. And then other than that, if you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below, especially if you've built this kit. Until next time, have a great day, stay frosty, and happy modeling.